A Nascent Kaleidoscope. Chapter 171. My mirage struggled against his spear, neither giving an inch. "Ha ha!" Rider of Red began to laugh, a wide grin on his face and killing intent pouring out onto me. "I knew it, bastard. You were holding back before." I couldn't help but match his expression. "Like you're one to talk." I pushed his spear away and slashed at his body. He didn't even bother to dodge, raising his arm, and my blade pushed against his skin without budging. "That shit isn't gonna work," he shouted, grabbing onto the edge of my sword. His spear reeled back, the air distorting as it pushed towards my heart again. "Soon hail Vike," I shouted. The words vibrated in the air as they enveloped him. The muscles on his arm bulged as his eyes widened. He did his best to remain a grip on his spear, but it was forced out of his hand and flew to the side. Still not a shout I was particularly adept in, but it did its job. To his credit, the moment of confusion was brief. His knee was already sailing towards my stomach. I slapped my hand down to block it, and his fist moved towards my head, my aura flaring to shield me from the blow, and his hand still gripped tight on my sword. "Tricks!" he spat out, eyeing the shining barrier projected from my soul. I held my free hand up towards his face, the lightning still clinging tightly to my arm like armor. "Burst!" I let all the lightning uncoil and burst out of my hand, right into his face. I felt the grip on my sword lessen enough that I could pull it free. He took a step back, regaining his composure quickly. As I thought, I tapped my sword on my shoulder. "Your noble phantasm prevents damage, not the physical force behind my blow." Ryder cracked his neck, holding his hand out to retrieve his spear. "The fact that you know that, and still call me Siegfried." He let out a sigh. "You're doing it just to piss me off." "Come, Dragon Slayer," I called out with a cheeky smile. "And it's working more than it should." He lost his grin, going into a stance. He was about to attack before hundreds of the skeletal monsters began to swarm on me. Their battlefield lines had finally been restored, and I was quickly reminded where exactly we began our second fight. How many eyes were on us right now? "Annoying pests!" Ryder shouted. Magical energy coalesced around him as he thrust his spear. Hundreds of thorn-like blades made of his mana stabbed at everything around us, including me. My other swords shot out of my ring at blinding speed, arcing and swinging in every which way around me. Ryder's gaze met mine, and I merely raised an eyebrow at his attack. "Cute," I replied, waving my hand to have my swords hover around me slowly. "Well, you do make this more interesting." He tapped his foot on the ground and retook a proper stance. Again, right as he was about to attack, the sky filled with arrows, coming right towards me. "Sis!" Ryder shouted, an annoyance in his voice. "Well, I guess we're doing this." I muttered, but I couldn't really fault her. I did step out in the middle of two armies and challenged everyone. It was no place to expect a duel. 100 birds. I swung Mirage. The overlaid slashes comprised of magical energy to mimic the sword phantoms found in Eastern ideology. I could recall when doing 10 of them was straining for me. I tilt my head slightly as a few arrows pierced through my attacks. The penetrative power was surprising enough that I had to have my swords shoot up and block. Ryder, Archer of Red, appeared next to the spear wielder. "This isn't a duel. Get your head out of your ass and focus." Right. I had to focus too. I glanced to the side and noticed that Reiku was already engaging the Lancer Servant of Red. I don't know what her deal was, or perhaps I did. We hadn't spoken of Lancer's identity, but I think we could both guess at it based on the more obvious clues provided. It seemed to be a sore spot for her, and I don't think even she understood why, so the topic was left alone. I turned and glanced at the black faction out of the corner of my eye. Lancer was staring at me. The look in his eyes, it made me feel as if he wanted to skewer me without hesitation, yet he did not move. No, he gestured every now and then, and the forces around him moved at his command. They began to engage the horde of skeletons, or rather the dragon-tooth warriors. They are a rather inexpensive creation by those from the older age. They are rather simple to make by planting dragon teeth in the ground. I know Medea can make them easily, but there are probably dozens of other famous magi who could do the same, so that doesn't narrow down Caster of Red's identity. Well, to be able to create them on this scale is rather impressive. I think even Medea would have trouble doing something like this. Either the caster is on her level or has a frightening amount of resources at their disposal. Unfortunately, Dawnbreaker won't be more useful than a normal sword here. While these things were skeletons, they weren't undead. Regardless, the army of dragon-tooth warriors engaged the army of golems and homunculi. I clicked my tongue as I saw the created humanoids fall to the constructs. Truthfully, I did not like killing people. I could weave some poetic reasoning as to why, but to put it simply, I find it wasteful. That doesn't mean I hesitate to do it when I have a reason, or I cower away when I have my blade to someone's neck. If someone needs to die, I will take their head without hesitation. Homunculi, though, raised and bred to be disposal soldiers. Their eyes looked utterly dead. Even when they were skewered by several dragon-tooth warriors, they didn't cry out or scream. They just moved to continue as best they could before their lives finally ended. Annoying. I believe I said, I was going to take you all on. I turned my head fully towards Lancer of Black, who sat upon a horse surveying the battlefield. I wanted their attention fully on me. Taking 3 talismans between my fingers, I flung them at the servant. They became shooting stars, crossing the battlefield at amazing speed towards their target. The Lancer's servant held out his hand. A baleful aura gathered around, a grin rising on his face as he jerked his arm up. Stakes shot out of the ground, piercing through the paper spellworks, stopping them in their tracks. Impressive for a master. Lancer spoke for the 2nd time this evening. To think a living being dares to act so arrogantly in front of so many servants. He stepped off his steed, giving it a pat as it started trotting away. I slid to the side, lightning arcing crossed the ground in my wake as I looked at the green-haired rider who resumed our fight. "Don't ignore me," he said with a cheeky smile. "Bindings of Gaia." I pressed my hand to the ground, forming the runic sentences to actualize my spell. The roots sprung up around the rider's servant as I swung my sword, destroying another hail of arrows the archer of red shot at me. She had already disappeared into the crowd, arrows continuing at me from the shadows. Whisper flashed through the area, carving out runes, spells forming and shooting off at every appearance of the cat-like woman. My attention was on Lancer of Black, though. I flicked my hand to cast my own spells. My runic circles floated behind me, discharging lightning at the spear-wielding servant. Surprisingly, he didn't move at the coming barrage. "Berserker!" he lazily called out. A woman wearing a wedding dress with strange limbs jumped in front of him. She crackled with her own lightning. The big mace in her hand erupted to disrupt my attacks with ease. "Rhaera!" she shouted, the ground bursting beneath her as she ran at me. My bindings of Gaia wore off, Rider staring at me, spear in hand as he thrust it forward, covering the distance within a blink of an eye. Arrows filled the sky, some even given me a dreadful feeling, packed full of magical energy. Even Lancer swung his hand out, stakes jutting out of the ground as they threatened to impale me from below. I let out a sigh. I guess this is what I get for challenging so many servants at once. They are a prideful bunch and would make me regret this course. But still, that's more like it. I couldn't help but grin as the dragon, slaying blade flew into my hand. My magical energy erupted as I gripped the noble phantasm and invoked its true name. Ascalon. Their surprise was obvious. My sword moved in inhuman ways that defied the conventional laws of the world to block every attack that was aimed at me. A nearly perfect defense. Mace was deflected to the side, spear was blocked, arrows shattered, and stakes rebuked. As my noble phantasm's effect ended, I reached out and grabbed Berserker's mace, the lightning dancing up my arm. I forcefully repelled it by recovering my own arm in my own lightning element. Slamming my foot onto the ground, I hefted her mace up, which she refused to let go of, and threw her towards the last spot I saw Archer. I slid my foot against the ground, casting an earthen spike spell towards Ryder to obscure his vision. In that moment that he was caught off guard, I took out the Staff of Magnus, pointing it at the Ryder servant. A spell circled formed at the tip, actualizing a rather simple spell. Thunderbolt. It was a stronger variant of a lightning bolt, packing a bit more punch. Adding on my lightning affinity, it discharged with an impressive force. The spot he was standing on was scorched. My own earthen spikes had been utterly reduced to ash. "You bastard, you have something like that." The dust settled. Achilles stood there, arms covering his face. He had good instinct to do that in that brief moment. One of his arms had been charred black. A divine construct. He narrowed his eyes. So I was right, divinity is the key. I tapped the staff on my shoulder before pointing it towards Lancer of Black. Fires of Muspelheim. Whisper wasn't inactive this time, weaving the spell for me to use. The intense flames came together and erupted in the direction of Lancer. I thought about firing it at Ryder, but with his speed, even at this distance, I knew he would be able to dodge it now that he knew not to trust his own protections. Ryder didn't seem to care. His face was eerily calm. A noble phantasm and a divine construct. His arm was black, armor having been destroyed, yet he didn't look fazed. I could only praise his martial ability in these circumstances. Who are you? I would very much like to know that as well. Lancer's growl reverberated across the battlefield. The smoke and fire died down to reveal his untouched figure, stakes falling away and disappearing into ashes in the wind as they acted like a shield at my attack. No, that wasn't quite right. He was burned a little bit, but nothing writing home about. Still, my spell harmed him, and he had to defend against it. That was something. Rhea! Berserker's growl also sounded out, accompanied by an explosive burst of lightning in the crowd of skeletons. She didn't look all too pleased with me. Maybe it was the arrows sticking out of her back? Couldn't see Archer anywhere, but she was a wily one, hard to pin down even with my perception. Shall I properly introduce myself, then? I chuckled. I guess I fully earned the attention of everyone here instead of just being an annoyance. Well, the battlefield clearly warped around my presence. It was hard to ignore me at this point when I was going after everyone and anyone. It would be the smart thing to just deal with a chaotic entity like me before looking at each other. Wilhelm Henry Schweinorg at your service. At my words, the sky above crackled ominously. Chapter 172. POV Caster of Red, William Shakespeare. Wilhelm Henry Schweinorg at your service. I sat up as he announced his name, the dramatic introduction, the delivery, the ambience. Wonderful! I gave a small clap. How I wish I could pick his brain. I bit my thumb. Oh, how I wish to go learn of his thoughts, to understand this character that entered the stage, front and center, declaring he'll take on both factions. Simply marvelous. If you keep speaking, I will be more than happy to toss you off the edge of my gardens so you can head down and see for yourself. A venomous voice rebuked my appreciation. I am surrounded by critics. My dear assassin, I am but a humble writer. I'm afraid the mere fall will force me off the stage for good. I bowed. We can only hope, she drawled, flicking her finger to enhance the long-distance magecraft viewing spell she had cast. Schweinorg. I turned my gaze towards the one who spoke. Our master, so to speak. Not the person who had summoned me, but the one who now held my leash. Well, I did find him more interesting than that boor who performed the ritual. Does the name hold significance, my master? I grinned and twirled my pen. He turned to me, his eyes lit with a small fire within. This was a true main character. I was excited to see how this play unfolded before my eyes. Schweinorg, it's the name of the second magician, Kischer Zelretch Schweinorg. Master looked at the man who had wounded him intently. I was not aware that the Kaleidoscope had any family members. Oh ho, his character becomes even more interesting. A possible relation to such an illustrious figure? How mysterious this new addition to the stage is. Irrelevant. Assassin spat out, tapping her fingers on her throne. Inside my garden, even a magician can't move freely. She stared at his face, the master that was fighting against multiple servants, and scowled deeply. I'll teach him a lesson if he has the courage to step foot here. She had been quite irritable after healing up our master from that little meeting. Well, more so than usual. Shiro Kodomine suffered no major wounds, but he was still injured and the scars lingered. I suppose her arrogance is well earned. My artistic flair started and ended with the written word, but I could appreciate other avenues of expression. And to deny her noble phantasm was a work of art would be the height of foolishness. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Would this flying fortress be a stepping stone, or an unassailable wall for our performers? As a caster-class servant I could understand this place more so than any another class, even if I never practiced magecraft in my life. Not only was it a fortress high up into the heavens, it was Assassin's workshop. A plot twist it was, to have our assassin also be our more traditional magus of the group. I will believe in your ability, assassin, our master said without any hesitation, making our dear assassin puff up happily. "Oh, master, if only you weren't a man of the cloth, this could have been a fun rom-com side story. A bit low-brow for my tastes, but it's hard to not enjoy the simplicity every once in a while, especially since it wouldn't detract from the main plot. I have been left woefully in the dark, master." I clutched my heart, aghast at this turn of events. "What plans have you devised so I may prepare myself accordingly?" I readied my pen and parchment. Master had a small smile on his face, looking at the viewing of the battle. "His entrance has given us a good opportunity to acquire the Grail. Oh my, to assault the enemy's stronghold while their forces are away." I began scribbling down my thoughts. "Do you wish to sneak in or openly attack the front?" I looked up, waiting for an answer, then paused. "Wait, don't tell me." I stopped myself. I wanted to see how this would play out without any spoilers. "You can always come along, Castor." Shiro gave a small laugh. "I am but a humble playwright, my master. The battlefield is no place for me." "Gods forbid he does something useful," Assassin added offhandedly. "Assassin, I am wounded by such harsh words." I clutched my heart. Did I not apply my talents in healing Lancer? I did most of the work. She scoffed in annoyance. "Ah, but it would have taken at least another day to fully heal him had I not intervened." I pointed out, much to her chagrin. "And I shall apply my efforts once again," I declared, turning back towards our master. "I shall provide you with a fine blade to fight for your ideals, master. So struggle. Attempt to prove your ideals to the world, and I will watch it all. POV Fiori Forveg, Ig Millennia, Master of Archer of Black. This location is suitable, thank you." I politely dismissed the homunculus that was navigating my wheelchair. "Fiori!" Darnick spoke. His voice was not loud, but it carried across the entire room we occupied. "How is the situation with Archer?" His last report noted there was no movement around the perimeter, and he was focusing on the battle and waiting for an opportunity to intervene advantageously. I replied. Archer, rather Chiron, had taken the highest point on the castle and was relaying information to me. "Good. Well done, Fiori," Darnick praised. "Thank you, Lord Darnick." I bowed my head slightly in appreciation. "Is the long-distance scrying ready?" I inquired. "It's done." Gords, the master of Saber, slammed the door open, apparently answering my question. Behind him, Selenite sauntered in. "Is this it?" He looked around with an annoyed expression. "I'm here too. Calls arrived late, as per usual. I swear, if I didn't keep on him, he would never show up. Everyone else is busy with their own duties." Darnick raised a scepter, and screens appeared at the center of the room, giving us a long-distance scrying of the battle. "We'll take you all on." The master that Saber had spoken of appeared on the screen. All of us seemed surprised at his arrival and sudden declaration. "That brat!" Gord slammed his fit on a nearby table. "Oh ho!" Selenite let out a haughty laugh. "Is this the one who attacked you?" "He snuck up on me." Gord snapped. "If he didn't sneak attack me, I'd have easily taken him." He had conveniently forgotten that this master had fought with a servant, per Saber's words. Cull seemed to ignore them, staring at the image. "So that's his servant, any guesses?" "I do not see any clues besides her being from the east, and wielding a sword as a woman. That should narrow it down a little bit, but it still leaves us hopelessly in the dark." I said quietly. "Indeed." Darnick nodded towards me again. "It may prove more fruitful to focus on Saber of Red's master instead." We continued to watch, mostly in bated silence. Insofar there was no need to assume command over out servants. Lord Darnick's servant, Lancer, was leading them well enough. I was not a military expert, so I could not comment beyond what I saw on the surface. The army of skeletons was a bit concerning, but they didn't look very strong. But they seemed utterly insignificant when the master and the rider's servant clashed right in the middle of the army. "Ha! He's attacking his own faction." Gord sneered. "Let them kill each other. We can clean up the rest." That didn't last long, as he also took on Lancer. I didn't understand this master's mindset, why he looked so confident to fight so many servants by himself. His thaumaturgy was beyond impressive. I've never heard of a magus with such control over lightning magecraft before. "Is he really a nobody?" I whispered. "There's no way." Selenite crossed her arms. "No way in hell a guy like that is unknown. He must be disguised or something." I glanced at her, but I think she spoke the words on everyone's minds right now, judging by the looks on everyone's faces. It was common knowledge that a magus couldn't match up to a servant, yet he was fighting several at the same time. The surprises continued. A noble phantasm. He possessed a noble phantasm that was not a servant's. That would have turned the entire Mages Association upside down if it came out. The Fraga clan is the only known owners of a noble phantasm, and they are a very unique situation. No, if that wasn't enough, Ryder declared the staff the master pulled out to be a divine construct. How was I supposed to react to that? This war was already something I had a hard time coping with, and now there's someone like this running around? Wilhelm Henry Schweinorg at your service. The name of the master was finally revealed, and what should have turned into discourse to plan our next course of action instead continued in utter silence. Like the wizard Marshall, I said quietly. Does he have any family? Calls, my younger brother, sighed, sitting down. Selenik's hands balled up tight. Is there an idiot in this world who would dare to use the Kaleidoscope's name like that otherwise? She spat out angrily. Gord's just looked lost. We all turned towards Lord Darnick for direction. I felt at ease when his reaction didn't change, his aristocratic expression still hardened and unwavering. There was a reason he presided over the family, why we were all willing to be under him and go against the Mages Association. Truly he is. Fuck! The uncharacteristic word left his mouth. Oh, Wilhelm POV. Well, based on what Reka told me, my last name isn't really noteworthy, as the name Zelretch had taken much higher precedence. Oh well. Anyways, I looked up at the sky. The memory of fighting that dragon had come back, and I smiled brightly. Strunbach storm call. The moon was immediately covered, and my storm enveloping the sky. It was smaller than the dragon's, but that was expected, I suppose, and it wouldn't last very long. I had less experience with this shout than it did, so it was impressive in its own way. I held out my hands and laughed as lightning bolts began to fall from the sky, targeting the servants. What the hell? Achilles was the first to look confused at the sudden turn of events. Even to the other servants that didn't have the same protections, this wouldn't do much, but it was a good harassment strategy. Rhea! Berserker roared, getting hit head-on. Annoying! Lancer scowled, throwing his arm up, summoning stakes to intercept the blasts. Speaking of harassment, I saw Archer hopping around, avoiding them entirely. I took that moment to grab Mirage and shift the space around me, appearing dozens of yards away and right next to Archer. I could see the fur on her ears stand up, her head turning to me with shock. I revealed my name. There was no point in hiding my magic. Her bow was already facing MYE. Arrows knocked and pointing towards my head, but I was quicker. Even as the arrow passed by, barely grazing my aura, my Mirage pierced into her chest. Sis! I heard Ryder's cry, and the battlefield erupted at his sudden movement. I described his movement before as instantaneous, and this put that to shame. His spear came like a meteor as I adjusted myself to defend. My aura flared to its max, and my other hand, which held my staff, moved to block. The fury he displayed only exemplified the force behind his spear. The force pushed my staff back to my chest, his strength impressive with the force of his speed behind it. I let go of Mirage, instead grabbing his spear with my free hand, and a spell circle formed at the tip of my staff of Magnus. You think I'd fall for something like that? Ryder howled, as something appeared in his other arm and swung at me. A shield. My vision was consumed entirely by the sight of a shield. It was like the world went silent, and my heartbeat stopped, my breathing ceased. I summoned my boosted gear onto my arm and held it up like a shield. My vision went momentarily dark as a shield hit me. I blinked, and the next moment I was hurling through the air, skipping across the ground. My aura was shattered by the blow, not able to absorb everything, about half of it gone from that single shot. I rose to my feet, a little shaky, as I looked at what happened, the distance I was from where Ryder stood, fussing over Archer. I'm fine, Archer hissed, removing my sword and tossing it to the side. My spirit core is intact. Look at the gauntlet. Drake's words echoed in my ear. I did as he said, and my eyes widened. There was a crack on it. That's not good. It's not as bad as it looks. It'll repair itself over time. But you should know what kind of ridiculous thing would be needed to damage the gauntlet like this. Yeah. I looked up at Achilles, who seemed rather pleased with himself. I wiped away the blood flowing down my nose and the corner of my mouth. It felt like I was hit by a mountain, maybe something more. Well, he's already out. No point in hiding it. I put the staff away, holding my hand out to bring Mirage back to my hand while my other swords returned to my side. Our eyes locked. I held the gauntlet up. Boost. I called out, doubling my physical capabilities. The rush was always insane, intoxicating. I'm not used to being ignored. I turned at Lancer, who casually strode over. That baleful aura enveloping as he jerked his hand up. The ground was torn apart. Hundreds upon hundreds of stakes burst out into the sky, weaving around at his command. Like a torrent, they moved around him, and it was just a flick of his wrists that made them turn and come right at me. Well, allow me to rectify that. I was unperturbed by the sight. It was certainly impressive, and even dangerous, but I was feeling rather confident right now. My sword of destruction moved in front of me as I fed it my aura. These were no divine flames. It erupted in my power of destruction, pointing towards the mass of stakes and shooting at them. They were nothing more than paper in front of my sword, in front of my bloodline that could even reach the divine. The crackling of that dark energy jutted out in every direction, engulfing all the stakes that had passed by. What? Lancer blurted out, his composure changing for the first time. What is this disgusting power? He flexed his arm, more stakes coming forth, but it was unable to stop my sword of destruction from moving forward towards him. He ceased the fruitless endeavor and instead lifted his spear up about to strike, but paused. His eyes glanced to the side as another figure materialized next to him, great sword in hand colliding with my sword of destruction, knocking it away. He's here. Drake spoke in my soul. I could feel him as well. With a mental command, my sword flew back to me, my power of destruction rescinding. I told you to wait for my command. Lancer looked at the saber servant in annoyance. I'm sorry, but he is someone I must face. Saber declared, eyes not leaving mine. Get in line, buddy. Ryder stepped forward. That fury he had before seemed to disappear, and I didn't have the chance to see where Archer went. But by the sounds of battle to the side, and lightning cracking, I think her and Berserker are fighting. Funnily enough, fighting all of these servants actually handicapped them. If one of them wanted to release a wide-range noble phantasm, it was likely they would be ganged up on by the other side. I looked at Saber and let out a sigh, but a smile crept up on my face. So, you finally noticed? This feeling I felt in my heart when I first saw you, this burning need to turn my blade towards you. Saber gripped his sword tight. I now know why. He took a proper stance. You are a dragon. Chapter 173. Berserker of Red, Minamoto no Reiku, POV. Master. I watched him go headfirst into a battle between many servants, yet my eyes could not leave the one in front of me. I knew I should have been supporting him, but this feeling inside of me made it impossible to ignore Lancer of Red. Even if he told me to move as I wanted, I felt uneasy. A mother should be there to protect her son, especially on a battlefield such as this. Is it really okay for me to be greedy? I bit my lip, glancing back at the battlefield, then back at Lancer, who I followed this far away. An unconscious action that we both moved away to fight without interruptions. You are distracted. Lancer's words broke me from my thoughts. Despite this feeling, this compulsion to draw my sword, I was eerily calm and he appeared much the same. Are you worried about your master? He followed my gaze into the distance, a small smile forming on his face. You are lucky to have him as your master. I have not spoken with mine since my summoning, yet yours will fight by your side. I still can't help but feel jealous of you, Arjuna. Arjuna! I said in confusion. Lancer shook his head. Apologies, that was a slip of the tongue. He didn't take a battle stance, instead preformed something of a proper greeting. You have this feeling as well? This pain in my chest that does not allow me to exist while you still breath. I cannot live while you still draw breath. I place my hand on my sword's hilt. I have never met you before in my life. Why do I feel this way? I couldn't look at him as an insect. I was more clear-minded than I had been since my summoning. I am Karna, son of the sun god Surya. He introduced himself, spear hefted up. And you appear so similar to my brother. It is almost like a jest. Is it a cruel twist of fate, or a boon I should be thankful for? The hero of charity, I whispered, the knowledge coming to the forefront of my mind, and many things began to make sense now. I am Minamoto no Reiku, daughter of Goza Tennu. Goza Tennu, an aspect of Indra. A flash of understanding was seen on his face. Yes, I confirmed. Indeed, this battle was inevitable. He shook his head again, but did not look displeased. Daughter of Indra, sister to my brother and fated foe Arjuna. Flames ignited around him. Fight me, or return to your master's side, and we can continue our battle like so. He was letting me choose. This fight was important to him, more than I could understand, even with this strange feeling compelling me to raise my blade against them. I don't want him anywhere near my master. No, you are dangerous. I shook my head, my sword drawn from its sheath. I will crush you here. This time it will not end with merely an arm. He smiled, lightly holding up the arm that had been healed, before letting out a small laugh. It took a command seal and 2 other servants to heal me this quickly. Your attack was praiseworthy. He gripped his spear back, taking a proper stance this time. Instinctively, I summoned forth my divine lightning, as if it had the incessant need to display itself against his flames. Yes, that is the lightning I know. Karna was more expressive than I've ever seen of him yet. Is it the will of the gods that this fight happens again, or just a happenstance of fate? He gave a genuine smile. Father, watch over me. Karna spoke softly. Father. I felt myself whisper under my breath, without even realizing my actions. My light roared, and his flames burst out as we collided for the first time. Wilhelm POV. I locked eyes with the dragon slayer, his gaze unwavering. I felt the trepidation, the call for my blood that pulsated off his blade. It was the first time I've had an anti-dragon weapon pointed at me as opposed to being nearby. It was different than even the holy attribute of a church that's like poison to my devil heritage. With them, it carried a purifying principle, the desire to remove my evil from the world. For this dragon slayer, I felt a murderous intent bearing down to cut me to pieces and scatter my ashes to the wind. His words gave me a moment of respite. Achilles looked at me, strangely. His lackadaisical attitude was shifting to something more serious. He briefly exploded in anger when I heard his companion, but he shifted back to that fun-loving fool that I've seen plenty of times now. Even when he was angry at my provocations, it didn't feel like he was all that invested beyond just having fun. Lancer of Black, he looked like he was mentally advising strategies. He didn't appear to be the type to run and head first like Rider of Red unless overly provoked to do so. Even this fight I was having with him, he didn't openly enter my range, taking the opportunity probe and feel me out. Well, if no one's going to make the first move, my head jerked up at the clouds and I realized they were no longer being struck by my lightning bolts. I held my hand out and static crackled all around me, but it wasn't of my own make. We all turned to see a massive pillar of green lighting shoot to the sky. My eyes widened as I realized who had just taken hold of my lightning, the berserker servant. My eyes reinforced. I could make her out of a crowd of disposable minions, her fighting archer of red. She raised her mace up and slammed it into the ground. Pillars of lightning erupted all over the area, the ground beneath us sundered from the unleashed torrent of power. We all moved to dodge, as the battlefield became completely chaotic. Out of the corner of my eye, an arrow made its way right for my eye, but it was not from Archer of Red. I caught it with a scowl, tossing it to the side as I continued to move. Annoying. I spat out as another arrow coming from the direction of the 8th Millennia Castle came at me. With a swipe of my sword, I deflected it easily, and another was right in the spot where I continued to move in. I dodged to the side, and there were 2 more right upon me. Okay, he was pretty damn skilled to predict me like this. I unleashed 2 birds effortlessly to destroy them, yet once again another was right in front of my chest. My aura flared, blocking it, only for a barrage to land in the same exact spot, even as I moved with a burst of lightning. 1 arrow pushed against my aura, another burst through the base of that one, hitting the same spot, and several more followed suit in the blink of an eye, like they were released with utmost certainty moments before I had even stood here. I looked down, and there was an arrow sticking out of my shoulder, my aura having been punctured through. I was more impressed than angry. I pulled it out, the arrowhead not being very deep. The wound healed almost immediately, but it was the fact that he managed to land a clean blow on me from so far away that really grabbed my attention. Well, I suppose I should return the favor. At this distance, I could only vague make out the silhouette of an archer up on the highest tower over at the castle. Arrows for arrows. I held my hand out, my lightning danced around my palms. It should go like this. Condense. Form. Accelerate. Lightning. Arrow. Burst. My lighting formed into the shape of arrows, aiming far away. With a thunderclap, they shot off into the distance. They arced across the sky visibly, nosily colliding with a bounded field that sprung up around the castle. The defenses didn't budge, and I just clicked my tongue in annoyance, but I think the archer already abandoned that sniping spot, so the effort wasn't wasted. Well, for a hastily made spell, it wasn't bad. I pivoted, foot digging into the ground as Mirage swung up to meet a bloodthirsty blade coming down on me. Well, you're first, I suppose. I grinned at the dragon slayer. I didn't react, but I was hesitant about being hit by that sword. Forget me already. I snapped to the side and held up the boosted gear as a shield to block the familiar spear of Ryder as it struggled to move against my gauntlet. You're blocking me with one arm, Ryder said with confusion. The strength of a dragon, I don't know how, but he's intertwined with one. Saber spoke up. Oh, both sides working together against me? I'm flattered. Tisk. Ryder clicked his tongue. I don't need help to beat you, bastard, he said, but didn't dismiss Saber. Saber pushed down on his sword, and I buckled slightly. His strength was no joke, but I wasn't even at my peak yet. The strength of a dragon, well, you're not wrong. What do you think, Drag? He has good insight. I can see how he was able to slay Fafnir. The jewel on the boosted gear lit up. His voice projected out. What? Ryder looked taken back. Even Saber's blade hesitated. You can speak. Of course. Do you think I'm incapable of it? Drake scoffed. Don't put me on the same level as that greedy dragon you killed. You know who I am. Saber still seemed utterly shocked that this conversation was happening. I've met that dragon in the past. Do you think I wouldn't recognize the person who carries his scent? Siegfried. You've got to be fucking kidding me. Ryder scowled and I held back a laugh. I stepped forward, pushed his blade away, and swung in a wide arc to force both Saber and Ryder back. It's as you say. Siegfried hefted his blade up again. I am Siegfried, the dragon-blooded knight. If you can speak, I would ask your name, dragon. Haha, actually ask you my name, I like you. Struggle, dragon slayer. Fight with all your might, and test yourself against my wielder. Drake declared. I am Drake Gotch, the Red Dragon Emperor. I will remember your name. Siegfried nodded. I have one more thing to say. Siegfried perked up attentively. Boost. Me and Drake said at the same time. Again, Siegfried's eyes widened, my sword swinging up from below at him. He moved his sword, Balmung to block, but his guard was destroyed at first contact. I ducked down as Ryder's spear moved through the spot my head had just been. No indication that he even moved. His speed still ridiculous. But at this point, it didn't seem out of my reach anymore. He twirled his spear, swinging it down in the same movement to try and catch me. I slid to the side and slashed my sword at him, full of magical energy. He quickly brought his spear up to block, only to get blown back at the impact, ground upheavaled as he regained footing. I flicked my hand towards Siegfried. Talismans flew out, forming a spell around him. 3 elements sealing formation. I didn't give him another second glance as my gauntlet-clad hand launched out, connecting with Achilles' face. The force of my blow knocked him off his feet, his head jerking to the side. To his credit, he didn't back down. He didn't get disorientated by the fact that I had just managed to land a solid hit on him, even when he's been having the speed advantage. His own fist snapped back, an otherwise sharp and crisp jab I had narrowly dodged. His speed was still something else, and I was starting to think he had an ability that allowed him to match my own speed in some capacity, because it felt like his was keeping pace even after 2 boosts. His knee shot up, but I pushed it down with my palm, followed up by an elbow from his side. His martial arts were indeed impressive, aiming for every opening I had to sneak a jab into. Pancration, I believe it's called, the most famous bare-handed fighting style of the ancient Greeks. This didn't mean he abandoned his spear. It tried to sneak in, but was continuously rebuked by my sword, which had the advantage at this distance. He was losing ground, quickly. At this point, my physical abilities trumped his. Each of my blows forced him back, and he buckled under the strain. I glanced to the side to see Siegfried already tearing through my seal after only a few breaths' worth of time. His physical prowess combined with his innate magical resistance did short work to my hastily applied spell. He was already charging at me in a single blink of an eye. His overhead slash tore apart the ground, but I held firm as Mirage was brought up to block. With a single hand, I pushed his sword back to his chest as he struggled to fight against me. Achilles, spear shot out again. This double teaming was a bit annoying. I guess it was time to do something about it. My other sword flew at him. While not doing much, it was enough to give me a moment as my gauntlet-clad palm opened up towards the rider-servant. Penetrate! I called out as a beam burst forth, tearing through his chest. Achilles let out a pained shout, perhaps mostly filled with surprise at his defenses being overcome so abruptly. I gripped Mirage with 2 hands and knocked Siegfried's blade away. Following up, my free hand opened up and Ascalon flew down into it as I slashed down his own chest. You're not the only one with an anti-dragon noble phantasm, dragon-blooded warrior. I grinned, my sword cutting deep into him. Rider! It was Archer this time who shouted, arrows flying at me from the distance, my swords darting out to meet them in midair. Saber! Another voice joining the fray, the Lancer of Black, decided to rejoin after backing away in the initial chaos that I guess he couldn't sit still after I just wounded 2 servants simultaneously. Woohoo! A shout erupted from above as my head snapped up. A person came flying down on a strange creature, lance in hand as he tried to stab at me. I swiped my hand, shattering the space around me, appearing a little distance away in a few steps, only to be bombarded by a hail of arrows, this time from the Archer of Black, whom I had yet to get a proper look at. I dodged easily enough, but that just opened me up to new problems. Rhea, a massive torrent of lightning was discharged my way. Stabbing my swords into the ground, the staff of Magnus appeared in front of me, and I cast a greater ward to defend. The residual blast scorched the earth around me for dozens of meters in every direction, but I was otherwise unhurt. Letting it go, I allowed it to float around me, just like my swords, easier to call upon. A loud whistle filled the air, and a chariot flashed through the air at a speed that made even Achilles look a bit slow. The 3-horse, noble phantasm sliding in under everyone's noses to pick up the rider-servant as Archer of Red astralized and disappeared. The chariot zipped through the air in a way that was extremely hard to track. In a literal blink, it had already disappeared from sight. Unfortunate, I was hoping that blow would have taken him out, but there was good money on him having some variation of battle continuation. Some servants in their legends had survived having their hearts gouged out, and conceptualized into the ability to fight through such things. If they could heal Lancer's arm, it was entirely possible that wound was not as debilitating as I would hope. But now, I was surrounded by the entirety of the Black faction, though I've seen nothing of their assassin, which kept me on guard. How long are you going to stand around? I called out. The servants looked at me warily. Humph. I was watching you flail around like a novice. It was fun to watch. Mordred's voice flowed into my ears, her vibrant armor materializing next to me. I couldn't help but grin, sweeping my gaze around at all the enemy servants. This is my berserker servant. I introduced. Fuck you, I'm a saber. She shouted in return. See, a berserker. I laughed, growling. She just growled, but didn't keep arguing. You're outnumbered. Surrender and we may work something out. Lancer leveled his spear towards me. It took me a moment to figure out your identity. I replied, looking right at him. It's obvious in hindsight, but I was caught up with other things admittedly. Your Majesty, I should have expected the Black faction to summon you, since this is your territory. Oh, you have good eyes. Lancer looked pleased. No, Vlad the Impaler. You are a king. I nodded. It was expected that you would try to gain the advantage without any losers on your side as well. To bring us over to yours would be the best outcome. I couldn't fault him, nor did I feel particularly offended at his attempt. Your answer. My answer. I pursed my lips, holding my hand up. Here it is. I snapped my fingers. The dust bombs all around the castle exploded as one. The bounded fields shuddered and burst as the numerous elemental effects cascaded in every direction. They all snapped their eyes back to their base of operations. I would be the first to admit that their defenses were impressive. It could even keep servants out without relying on noble phantasms to brute force in for the most part. Mirage swung up, resting on my shoulder. Should I repeat my answer? I said with a cocky smile. Chapter 174. You! Lancer, Vlad the Impaler looked furious. What have you done? Whoops, was that important? I feigned shock. You're such an ass. Mordred actually chuckled. Well, they don't seem happy. I flexed my fingers, getting a good feel on how fatigued my body felt with the adrenaline pumping through me. I was still good to go. I wonder why. Mordred's dry tone was noticeable even through her helmet. Hee hee, Master keeps screaming in my ear. The pink-haired Ryder servant said with a giggle. So quick question. I looked at Ryder. I don't mean to be offensive, but are you a boy or a girl? Why don't you find out? She winked at me, tugging on the hem of their skirt. Oh my God! Mordred spat out. Did a shiver run down your spine too? Fucking yes. Mordred sounded horrified. Reminds me of when the adulterer cross-dressed. Stop ignoring me. Vlad slammed his hand on the ground, stakes erupting in the entire area except where his allies stood. I scoffed, slamming my staff onto the ground in response, forming a shield around me and Mordred. Good to know you aren't a complete pansy. Mordred grunted, flicking the shield around us. Do you think a pansy would be able to bet Artoria? I raised an eyebrow. She snorted. Of course no. She paused, head slowly turning towards me. The fuck you just say? That's right. I intentionally raised my voice. I fucked your father. Well, I will at some point at least. But that didn't stop me from posing dramatically. Been keeping that one in for too long. Though, everyone got really quiet. Nice! Ryder shot me a thumbs up. To my surprise, Mordred didn't overtly react. Should I call you mother then? She snorted, seemingly pleased with herself at the retort. Yes. No take-backs. Wait, what? Come, it's time for some mother-son bonding. I let go of my staff, taking back Mirage. No, seriously, what the fuck? My attention was drawn elsewhere from Mordred's balking, gleams of light heading towards us in the distance. I cast condensed lightning over my limbs again, and reapplied all my enhancement spells. Lightning, arrow burst. I raised my hand over towards the forest. A dozen lightning arrows shot out, intercepting arrows firing right at us as the barrier fell. I would need to work on the casting sequence when I had time later, but it was actionable for now, I suppose. As if on K, they all moved on us. I grinned as Mordred erupted in her own red lightning, mimicking my own as it crackled around me. The ground was utterly destroyed as she burst forth, sword smacking into Ryder's large lance. Sparks flew as they traded blows, Ryder being deceptively nimble with that large weapon. Oh well, I guess I can support her. She'd been patient this long and really wanted to fight apparently. Holding out my hand, I cast my lightning arrows. Dozens upon dozens of them filled the air. The other servants around me appeared hesitant and ready for battle, but instead, I pointed towards the forest and fired them off to keep that archer pinned down. Boost! I called out again, regaining double my abilities after using a penetrate on Achilles. The ability itself consumed all my boosts to use. Your presence skyrocketed again. Siegfried commented, moving at me with a burst of speed. I see it is tied to your gauntlet, and quite literally with your words. His sword swung out fiercely, my own swinging out to meet it. According to Reiku, he was an endurance fighter, but that didn't mean he had to be passive. Speaking of Reiku, I briefly focused on the link between us. I could sense the turbulent emotions flowing back. She was deep into the fight, and it was important to her, so I chose not to distract her. Ha! Siegfried swung his dragon-slaying sword down and I swung Mirage up to meet it, the impact blowing away the surroundings. His blade struggled against mine. This wound you gave me, it has yet to heal. His eyes trailed the line of blood that was still dripping down his chest. Ascalon is a pretty good anti-dragon weapon. You may not have the soul of a dragon, but your body may as well be one physically. A dragon with an anti-dragon sword. How amusing. Siegfried actually smiled. I let out a chuckle. Like you're one to talk, dragon-blooded warrior. Saber, don't fall into his rhythm. Lancer sneered, jerking his hand up, the baleful aura surging and stakes attacked me from all sides. Annoying. I grunted. My other sword swung around me. My own lightning burst out as well, destroying them all. Are you just going to stand back, mighty king? Very well. His spear swung at me, the distance closing with a blink of an eye. My eyes widened as I blocked with my gauntlet. The force of it actually made my arm shake. He only grinned, savagely, as the two servants pressed the advantage. I tumbled slightly, but quickly regained my foot, deflecting attacks from both foes. A physical boost from your legend being intertwined with the land we're fighting on? No, this is more than that. You are significantly stronger than a lancer should be. I snapped my fingers, runic circle summoned in the air, but not aimed towards me. Mordred. I looked towards her. She was taking on two servants, no three. Archer was really screwing with her. There were some arrows sticking out of her armor, even if she was overpowering the berserker and rider servant. They began to discharge lightning bolts towards the oncoming barrage. Humph, with my demonic defender of the state, as long as you remain within my territory, my abilities are unmatched. He waved his arms out, grandstanding. Impressive, but how about boost? I called out, shifting through the kaleidoscope, appearing right in front of him. My mirage swung at his neck, only to be deflected by Saber. They made a good combo. Makes it hard to get a deciding blow without leaning more into my gauntlet or magic. I've had enough of this foolishness. Lancer's aura exploded out, the ground shook, and even the sky turned red. My eyes widened. The release of his noble phantasm was obvious at this point, and I felt a large sense of danger. The lightning around my legs burst out, and I moved towards Mordred as fast as I could. Come, savages who trample over my territory. It's time to discipline you. I'll turn my compassion and rage into red-hot stakes and skewer you all. And these stakes are not limited, but truly infinite. So despair, and gorge on your own blood. The aura around him reached its peak. Khazikli Bay. Mordred POV. Guess I'll get you Pinky, and the monster over there. I gestured towards the obvious berserker servant who just growled and roared without speaking. And if that wasn't obvious enough, only a mad fool would wear a wedding dress to fight in. Rhea! Berserker shout, running towards me without an ounce of martial prowess. Compared to that cow bitch, this servant was weak. I knocked her mace aside with ease. Even her discharging of lightning I could ignore with my own mana burst. Grabbing her face, I tossed her to the side. Don't forget me, woohoo! Ryder jumped off a strange mount, the bird creature going back up into the sky. He ran at me, the tip of his lancer aiming for the joints of my armor. The fool at least knew what he's doing. I stepped to the side, dodging his thrust. His speed was decent on ground, but nothing worth noting. I swung Claren up, a casual swing at his side, and he brought his lance to block it, an annoying grin on his face. Dangerous! I stomped the ground, my lightning bursting out before kicking him in the side. Rahaha! Berserker made herself known easily, her annoying shouting giving away her position every moment. I charged my sword with my magical energy and swung it in her direction, blowing her away. Ducking my head swiftly, several arrows sailed past me. My head jerked towards the forest where the archer of black from before was targeting me. Take this! Ryder shouted gleefully, the tip of his lance intertwined with his own power, piercing through the air towards me. The flat of my blade was brought up to block, but the force was enough to push it back into my chest before I could deflect it away. Fuck off! I shouted in annoyance as more arrows came at me in that brief moment. Swinging my sword in the air, I destroyed them from dozens of feet away. Grrrr! Berserker was on me again, mace slammed in the ground and discharged a burst of lightning towards me. At the same time, several more arrows came at me, and Ryder's lance shot towards my face. I slammed Claren into the ground, activating my mana burst again. Ryder and Berserker were blown back, but a stream of arrows hit my shoulder, tunneling through my armor. I was about to go after the archer, but suddenly magical lighting fired into the air, destroying another volley of arrows. I turned to see who cast the spell, though I could have guessed. Asshole, I didn't need your help. I spat out, but it was nice to have backup. He wasn't as much a pushover that I thought. I thought he was some smooth-talking magus that tricked father, but he's decently strong. I turned back to Berserker and Ryder, a grin forming on my face. I broke the arrows still sticking out of me. Well, how about round 2 without the bastard hiding in the back? How about we talk this out? Ryder offered. Yeah, no. I flicked Claren to the side, carving the ground apart. I was ready for another round, but something suddenly fell off, and the sky turned red with the ground shaking. What the hell? I felt someone grab me suddenly, fast enough that I didn't notice in time. Kazikli Bay! Avalon! A golden light surrounded me, a warm light I hadn't seen in a very long time. All around us, stakes shot out of the ground, but failed to penetrate this barrier around us. I was at a loss for words. Made it in time. That was dangerous. The bastard Magus laughed. This is why servants are scary. Noble phantasms are just hard to deal with. The light took an ethereal form around us, and it was something I would forever recognize. Father's sheath, I whispered. Yeah, she gave it to me to keep me safe. He smiled, holding it up for me to see. You really are together with Father? It was hard to imagine, but why else would he have this sheath? It only worked with Father's magical energy as well. He would have to have given it to this this person. She's someone very important to me. He pat my shoulder. Talk later, fight now. All right. I quickly dismissed all those troubling thoughts. I was a knight. I had no business being distracted by such things on the battlefield. I looked around again. The red sky started to fade, and even the uncountable number of stakes that blocked our vision began to disappear. I gripped my sword tightly, and I couldn't help but glance at this man who was beside me. Move quick, I'll support you. Fine, I replied. You better keep up. What kind of mom would I be if I let my son play without any supervision? He grinned, but for some reason, it didn't feel as annoying like it had been before. Father's sheath faded, just as the other noble phantasm returned the world to normal, and I burst out, targeting the berserker servant, who looked surprised at my sudden appearance. Not so fast. Ryder jumped after me. Trap of Argalia. The feeling of his noble phantasm activated. His spear lit up with an ethereal light as it stabbed towards my lower body. Bindings of Gaia. That! Magus's voice called out, and massive roots sprung up to wrap the rider servant up and bound him. Berserker swung her mace, but I sidestepped it easily. I poured a chunk of my magical energy into my sword, and my mana burst exploded out. Die! I shouted, swinging Clarent with all my strength right at the berserker servant, cleaving her in half and utterly destroying the area. The Father's lover appeared at my side. That's one down, well done. I don't need your praise. I huffed. Of course I could take that servant down. I'm the best knight under Father. Wilhelm POV. Mordred was acting strange, but I guess seeing Avalon might have dredged up some buried feelings. That noble phantasm, Kazikli Bay, was dangerous. The entire area, as in literally every square inch, was covered in stakes for its activation. And these weren't like the normal ones he can use as he wished. These ways gave off a foreboding feeling of death. Noble phantasms are dangerous. I had to use primordial runes, a divine construct, and my strongest shield spell to block that Lancer's noble phantasms from before. You continue to be pests. Vlad shouted, his face snarled in rage. I felt a twinge in my link with Sir Wiggles. Following the link, it looked like he found the Grail. I had him sneak in while we were distracting everyone and find the Grail. I looked at Mordred, then back at Lancer. Well, my feelings are hurt. I put my hand on Mordred. Good day, sir. I pulled Mordred through a portal opening up within the castle grounds. The hell? Mordred blurted out, landing on the ground from the sudden shift. The area was practically in ruins because of my bombs. Elemental effects were still seen everywhere, but there was no one running out to attack us. Sir Wiggles found the Grail one moment. I closed my eyes to follow his senses. I wasn't done. She threw her hands up. I watched you fight for like forever, and I barely got a turn. She whined. You can fight later. Let me focus. I tuned her out. Let's see. He should be at the right side, a few stories below the ground. Smart. Putting it closer to the ley line, it should be quick too. My eyes shot open. And then you. Mordred stopped, looking at me. What? Which bitch dares? I shouted to the surroundings, feeling a ping from the familiar link. My face immediately morphed into an expression of rage. Ho ho. A haughty laugh answered. My, when things happen you don't foresee, is this how you react? Imagine how we felt this entire time. A woman with long black hair appeared. I recognized her from before with the priest. She stood upon the castle walls, a good distance away. In any other situation, I may have made a cocky remark, or even flirted, But right now all I felt was unbelievable anger as she held Sir Wiggles, gripped tightly in her hand. He didn't move. His eyes were closed. I could only faintly feel him through the link. He was still alive. "Is this rodent yours, An evil grin grew on her face as she squeezed a little bit tighter. "Assassin." The priest's voice echoed out. He stepped up right behind her. "There's no need to be cruel. We've got what we came here for." As soon as the words left his mouth, a large skeletal beast touched down from the sky next to them. "You." I took a step forward, but she raised up Sir Wiggles. "Ah." She looked at me smugly. "Careful, I may accidentally squeeze it too tightly." I stopped in my tracks, only able to glare. "There, that's the perfect look for you." She laughed, mounting up with the priest, who just stared at me without emotion. As they took to the skies, she tossed Sir Wiggles down. I moved as quickly as I could to catch him. I immediately called up on the power of Avalon, letting its light wash over him. There were spots on him, green and black. He had been poisoned. "Come on, buddy, this is nothing." I ran a hand through his matted fur. "Oi, you gonna let them get away with that?" Mordred retracted her helmet, giving me a look. "This is more important." I didn't even harbor the thought. "You really care about that rabbit?" "He's family," was all I said. "Wilhelm." Vlad's enraged voice filled the area, already having come back to the castle. "Where's my grail?" I guess he had been informed on what happened by someone. "I don't have it." I spat out, cradling my familiar. "You're too late." Mordred clarified. "Those other guys stole it." He let out an angry grunt. "This is your fault, if you hadn't." "Quiet." Reiku appeared next to me. "Speak one more word, and I shall crush you, insect." "Lancer." Siegfried also came to calm his companion. Flanked by Ryder, and whom I believe was Archer since I didn't recognize him and he had a bow. I ignored them for the moment. "You're back." I sent towards Reiku. With a glance, I could see her condition. She had been fighting with Lancer for a while now, and it definitely showed. She was sporting many wounds and looked exhausted. Lancer was forcibly recalled. Reiku didn't sound too happy. "Another command seal?" "Yes, but..." He said that he needed one to regrow his arm in such short time. "That means 3 had been used. That doesn't sound right." Something was definitely up there. What happened? Why is everyone standing around? Riders slammed their lance into the ground and leaned against it. "Look up into the sky and see." I stated. "What do you mean?" Ryder looked up. "Oh, that's..." Siegfried looked surprised as well. How did that appear without anyone noticing? Even Vlad shared their reaction. "It appears that we've underestimated the Red faction." Archer's voice reached my ears. Being able to bring something like that out, it would not be simple. For them to do it under our noses, it speaks of detailed planning. I noticed it when they flew away. High up into the sky was a fortress. There was no doubt in my mind that it was a noble phantasm. A noble phantasm that existed in the normal world, not a single-use ability, and it was a flying fortress. Things were not simple at all. Sir Wiggles opened his eyes, the foreign colors leaving his body. "Good boy. I'm going to bring it down," I declared. "What?" Mordred looked at me. "You're going to take down that thing? That's probably Castor's fucking workshop and a noble phantasm. It probably has more defenses than this place, and such a stupid thing is probably from the age of gods." "Yup." I nodded at her words. They were surprisingly well thought out. I turned towards the Black faction members. "Temporary truce," I offered. Vlad scowled. "What's stopping us from taking you now and merely sieging them ourselves? The fact that they have a grail and thought it was a good idea to steal it implies they can do something with it. So time is a factor." I pointed out first. "And second, how much longer do you think the night will last?" I knew Ruler was skulking nearby. If we tried to do something overtly during the day, she had plenty of command seals for a reason. Vlad looked at me before furrowing his brow and clicking his tongue. "Fine, do what you wish to bring it down, we will not interfere. If you fail, I'm putting your head on a spike outside my castle." "Awesome, team up." Ryder jumped up happily. "How do you expect to bring it down?" Archer spoke up. His eyes reminded me of scat hackers. "I'm a magus, what do you think I'll do?" I took hold of my staff. "I'm going to cast a spell." I took a few steps forward. Each time my foot touched the ground, a magic circle formed around a rune. "I'll show you, the strongest spell I've ever created." the completed form of my 9 realms. Chapter 175. I continued my steps. Sir Wiggles watched in my arm, not fretting over the situation. He was a strong rabbit. He would easily recover from this little setback and be stronger for it later. My staff glowed bright, the accumulated magical energy a constant outpour onto the surroundings. Behind me were dozens of spell circles on the ground. Each spot I had passed by briefly until coming to a stop a little bit away from the others. "What's going on?" A voice shouted, coming from a large entrance deeper into the castle. He held himself upright, a cane in his hand as he swept his gaze around the area. Flanked by his sides were people in somewhat matching uniforms, and behind him was the familiar figure of Siegfried's master. Vlad shot him a look. "We have agreed to a ceasefire while we retrieve the Grail," he said plainly, though the way they looked at each other, I could guess a mental link, meaning this man was Lancer's master. Vlad was no doubt giving him a more in-depth explanation. "You're Darnik Priestone Ig Millennia, head of the Ig Millennia family." I met his eyes. "You are Wilhelm Schweinorg, that..." He emphasized my name, perhaps even with a tone of respect. "You don't have to look so afraid. My grandfather isn't going to interfere in this war." The pensive look on his face when he spoke could easily be understood if I placed myself in his shoes. The Ig Millennia family broke away from the Mages Association, and if Zelretch wanted to move on them, there was frankly nothing they could realistically do. "Now," I raised my staff up, beginning the important bits of the spell sequence. "I need to concentrate." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Reika look more alert. Despite being a berserker and having some weird version of mad enhancement, she was undoubtedly a warrior. Funnily enough, even Mordred appeared to be keeping an eye on the others while also watching me intently. Well, if my son was watching, I had to show off a bit. I swiped the staff against the ground, creating many more magic circles. Dozens upon dozens began to cover the ground all around me. Stabbing the staff of Magnus into the ground, I let go and withdrew a handful of talismans from my ring. Metal enriches water. Water nurtures wood. Wood feeds fire. Fire dries earth. Earth refines metal. They shot out, forming a pentagram that covered the entire courtyard. The 5 elements mutual generation. It was the creation cycle for most Eastern cosmologies. Usually, this spell had the effect of doubling the output of most other spells, but in this particular instance, it went even further. I began the next step. Runes all began to form around me with a flick of my wrist. They shot out and formed a large runic circle using the pentagram as the base. The sequence was reminiscent of a Skyrim runic spells I had come across, and thus repurposed for my own use. I wasn't done. Holding my hand up, I steadily began to draw more runes, primordial runes. The very air around the castle shuddered at the actualization of these spells that were created during the Age of Gods. This system of symbols that could reach the truth of the world with their hidden meanings. Overlapped, my primordial runes that represented the elements overlaid with my 5 elements mutual generation. Putting my hand over the orb on my staff of Magnus, I continued. 1 gives birth to 9. The ground around the castle shook, as if an earthquake overtook the area. The magical energy in the air stirred, and the stars above began to glow just a little bit brighter. My spell circles lit up immediately, all encompassed by the larger one that began to shine brighter and brighter. 2 different systems of world creation, 2 different cosmologies. The Eastern creation cycle bolstered the Norse's version of origins, the beginnings of their 9 realms. I felt a swelling in my chest, and I couldn't help but smile. This was the first time I attempted to cast the spell, and now the blessing of Odin burned within me, as if reacting to my intent. I was pulling massively on concepts connected to the Norse cosmology, and who better defined that than the All-Father himself, who hung himself upon the branches of Yggdrasil to gain wisdom. The blessing synchronized with the casting, adding weight to my spell, pulling further upon the concepts. And 9 embraces 1. I held my hands out. Something began to grow out of the ground. At a visible speed, they came together, merged and expanded. A tree. The World Tree. It grew, shooting up towards the sky, immediately eclipsing the height of the castle, towering above everything within 100 miles. I finished, and the final pieces of the tree sprouted, its form taking a solidified shape unto the world. Something not seen in millennia, not born of this age. It was fake. a broken image of the past, but for a moment it would exist again. Blessings of the World Tree, Yggdrasil. Still, the flying fortress sat above the clouds, continuing to look down upon us. What is that? It was Saber's master who spoke, pointing at the new addition to the landscape. The air. Archer spoke. It's nostalgic. I feel good, Mordred said idly, holding her hands up. The tree just existing is a boon to those who I choose to shelter beneath it. That is impressive magecraft, to call upon the sacred tree in this era like so. Siegfried spoke with praise. I had forgotten that he grew up in a time where the Norse were still adhered to, their teachings followed. Master, I feel energized, and my wounds are healing rapidly. Reka spoke through the link. I feel stronger as well. I wanted to respond, but something caught my attention up into the sky. The flying fortress shifted, and I saw colorful symbols alight around its exterior. Even with reinforcing my eyesight, I could just barely make out massive spell circles charging up. You! Do something! Saber's master shouted, pointing towards the sky. Can this stupid tree stop that? Did you think I cast the spell just for aesthetic purposes? I scoffed, withdrawing Gibalg from my ring and stabbing it into the ground. I call upon the realm of gods, the halls of immortals, and the All-Father. The tree shuddered and 9 figures appeared around it, located at the same places they existed along with the tree. These symbols, each representing their realm, glowed bright, but the one up top glowed the brightest. A floating city of gold, the symbol of the godly realm. Asgard, I commanded, tossing Gibalg up into it. Gibalg, it was a spear crafted by Skathak, who was taught her runic prowess by Odin himself. But that wasn't all. Gibalg could be said to be descended from a certain spear, one wielded by the All-Father, a symbol of his authority as the king of gods in this particular worldview. Gibalg that always strikes the heart, it made for a wonderful anchor to call upon the image of another spear, supported by my fake Yggdrasil. The spear which strikes anywhere within the 9 realms. Reveal yourself. My Gibalg filled with power, overlapping its existence with another phantasm, another memory and legend. Odin's blessing thrummed within my body. The spear solidified, a golden sheen now adorning the night sky, scaled up several fold from its normal size. The power of Asgard upon my spell, it gave everything to form the spear. This was the final form of Asgard as represented in my 9 realms. I looked up, completely unafraid as I watched the flying fortress gather power. It was clear it thought my spell was a threat, perhaps unknowing of what it does, but the absolute amount of power it radiated probably causes them to worry. And I'm sure whoever sat upon the throne within that fortress assumed they held the advantage, that they didn't even consider themselves in danger. I smiled while running a hand through Sir Wiggle's fur. The spell circles reached their peak above the clouds, and a handful of beams of destruction fired down upon us. Each one would be enough to vaporize the castle in full. I heard shouts behind me to bring back up the shield, to use what spells they could to defend. Mordred cast a glance at me. I could tell she was a bit hesitant, but I just winked her way, earning a scoff, but she settled down. Reka did not fret one iota. Her faith in me was a warm welcome. Strike with absolution, Gungnir. I commanded. It moved, faster than one would perceive normally. A golden line ascended to the sky, jutting out in directions, and moving in ways that should be impossible under the normal laws of the world. My spear and the fired magical beams collided with an explosion of magical energy. There was no epic stalemate, no fighting between spells. A golden spear returned to my side without resistance, the night sky becoming serene once again. My 9 realm spells, they take an aspect of the corresponding realm I imbue them with. I chose Asgard for defense, to have a shield to defend with in using the basic application. But here, Asgard takes on its true principle: the best defense is a good offense. What better defense was there than Odin's spear that strikes anywhere and never misses? I could use the spear to strike at them, but it perhaps would not do much. It was not something for wide spear destruction. No, I had something else in mind. While I called this my final form of my 9 realms, the truth was there was still much left to do to complete it. At the moment, I was comfortable calling upon 2 of the realms within. Asgard was the first, the manifestation of Odin's spear using Gibalg as an anchor and Odin's blessing to help facilitate the fake phantasm. The fires of destruction, Muspelheim, I called out, the second symbol ignited, quite literally. I didn't require anything to bring forth my concept of Muspelheim. I could do so with everything I had provided into this spell. But at the same time, I was a bit worried because this next one would be a bit aggressive. I withdrew the sword of destruction and tossed it into the raging fires. My sword that held the concept of destruction synergized with my spell that practically shouted with joy. My original application, the lesser version, the fire of Muspelheim. It was meant as a purely destructive force, and this completed form would not be much different. The flame swirled around my sword, changing shape, overlaying it like Giebald and Gungnir. It took a moment for them to solidify into the shape I desired, the false phantasm that I would be drawing upon. Some like sword that becomes a calamity. I called upon the new sword, the bane of all Norse gods. The sword which seared away the textures that was the Norse cosmology from the layers of the world, the sword which brought about Ragnar, wielded by the fire giant Surtr. Fake as it was, a mere image of a phantasm that no longer exists, it still held much weight in the state. The concepts that brought it together are some that have thoroughly disappeared from the world. This ridiculous sword that could match the pillar that fastens together the layers of reality. Distance did not matter. An absolute authority over life. Well, this version was significantly weaker, but certain concepts still applied to it. And with my sword of destruction, acting was a wonderful container for the spell to bring about the true sword's effects, even severely diminished as they were. The space around the sword was burned away. The flame that threatened to spew out was forcibly contained at the sword's edge, but still, everything in the vicinity became significantly hotter. If I lapsed in focus for even a moment, this spell would run rampant in all directions. It floated high up, my arm raising along with it. This one is for you, Sir Wiggles. Twilight of the Gods, Levitian. I swiped my hand through the air. The space between the sword and the flying fortress was immaterial. It was all burned away in an instant. A white streak extended from the point of the slash, all the way up to the sky, colliding with the defensive capabilities of the noble phantasm. They lasted only for a moment before a chunk of the fortress was incinerated, and the rest of it began falling from the sky. Oh, Dracula is only a second-rate vampire. You are one tough bastard. I grit my teeth, meeting each of Vlad's strikes head-on. He had blood running out the corners of his mouth, but that smile on his face revealed how much he was enjoying this. To survive against my enhanced abilities while in my territory, you are praiseworthy. He swung his spear out. Well, I just need to stall for time. While you're here, my servant can take out your companions. I began pushing back, my blade flashing out with increased speed. Vlad's brow furrowed. No, I simply have to deal with you quickly and go assist in retaking the Grail. Ha! Like I'll let you leave me like that. My other sword shot out, flying at him from all angles. He was forced to back off, the pressure of his attacks lessening. Annoying pest! He growled, jerking his hand up and summoning hundreds of stakes to pierce towards me. They did nothing in front of my many sword, all of which shot out to defend me. The attack abruptly stooped, Vlad looking dazed. No! He shouted, spear planting in the ground. Darnick, don't you dare! His voice filled with rage. He clutched his head, gritting his teeth. I forbid you from making me use this noble phantasm. Darnick, you backstabbing fool. What the hell is going on? I blurted out. I'm not him. I can't be, this isn't true. Vlad shouted out with increasing frenzy. No! I whispered in horror, realizing what was happening. The legend that attached itself to Vlad the Impaler, that carried itself over to modern times. I didn't think it was possible. Vlad growled, his features shifting visibly on what appeared to be a noble phantasm centered on himself. He changed, eyes bloodshot, fangs visible in his simile, and 3 words that brought sheer horror to every fiber of my being. It's Morbin time.